every time you have a sign in front of a bracket, you must multiply those together. So if we're looking at number 16, for example, here where you have a plus minus, you need to remember that a positive times a negative is a negative. Right? So you can't have plus minus because negative 6. And guys, if you want to, if it maybe makes it a bit easier, you can add in an extra step in between this one and your answer, where you just first do the first two numbers. All right? You can think what's negative 5 plus 7? That's 2, right? And then you must minus 6 from that. Then this is a bit easier to then get to your answer of negative 4. Okay, you're more than welcome to do that. You just add in an extra step where you do your first two numbers, you just write down the next number after that, and then you get equal to negative 4. So guys, while I was helping some of you the other day, I saw that your way of laying it out was not always correct. If you have a question like this, all right, a few of you are doing, actually, I'm not even sure how to write it because it feels so wrong to me. You're doing something like this, right? You were saying negative 5 plus 7 plus negative 6. Then you decided you're going to do that first. All right, so then you would maybe say, okay, that's negative 5 plus 7, which is 2. And then here you sort of decided to add your minus 6, and then you got to your negative 4. Right, you're going to get 0 if you do that. All right, you cannot say that all of this is equal to this, because it's not, because where is your plus negative 7? Your negative 6, I mean. And then you can't say that this is now equal to this, because where did this negative 6 come from now? All right, that is entirely wrong mathematically. If you put it in equal, that is saying that the first line is equal to the next line, is equal to the next line. Okay, you can't do like in between calculations. You can do it like what I did here. If you want to do the first two separately, you have to keep writing that minus 6 every time. All right, if the minus 6 is in your first line, it has to be in the next line and in the next line. Right, you can't decide, I'm going to leave out the minus 6 and put it back in as already true. All right, so please, if you did that, you need to copy it down in the way that I wrote this, and you need to fix that. You're going to get 0. All right, please, I don't know if they're very strict on that in primary school, but you have to write it correctly. Okay, I'm moving down a little bit. Let me know if you want me to talk through any of these. And that's something that you also might not be used to. You have to write the question down. You cannot just write the answer. Okay? You will also get to realize that in the test exam. You have to write the whole question, then whatever work you're doing in between. So here, this is a question as it was written on the worksheet. You have to write this whole question down. Okay, then you do your working, which is just doing this positive times a negative is a negative, and then you write your answer. Okay, you can't just write the answer, please. You get marks for in between working. You have to do that. Okay, I'm moving down a bit. Just tell me if you need to go back after any question if I was too fast. So guys, obviously here we're working with bigger numbers, right? We still need to be able to do these without the calculator. Okay, so I'm really hoping that when you're doing them at home or in class, that you are doing it without a calculator. If you are just practicing now, I'm going to type into the calculator, you're going to be lost when you have to do this in a test. Right? You're not going to be allowed to have a calculator on your desk at all. So you have to practice doing these actually without using a calculator. Yeah. Later on, yeah, when you're doing things that with like exponents and stuff, yeah, but not in term one. All right. Here we go, 29 and 50 on the back of the page, so you can see what happens with everything. Now guys, I just want to show you an example of why it is important to show your working. If we're looking at number 20, for example, you can always pay attention here to see. I'll give you some time to mark the rest now. Say you got number 20 in the test result. Okay, your first mark would be for doing this multiplication, for changing that plus minus to a minus. So you will get a mark for that. Then the second mark will be for the final answer. But now, if you did all of this in your head, right, you decided to not write the working down, and you got this wrong. Say you thought that this would be a plus 12, right? Then your answer is going to be wrong, right? Say there's nothing there, you just did it in your head, and you got an incorrect answer, you will get 0 out of 2. But if you wrote 22 plus 12 plus 10 by accident, if you made a mistake there, you will lose that first mark. But then, what is the answer in this case? What's 22 plus 12? 24 plus 10 is 44. Even though this answer is wrong, because it's following on from your previous line, you will get a CA mark for that. CA stands for continuous accuracy. Alright, so if you show your working and you're making a mistake here, you lose that mark, but then you're not going to lose the next mark as well if you're working with your mistake. But if you don't show that line and you just show me an answer of 44, I'm just going to say that's wrong. You're going to lose both marks. All right, so guys, writing your working down will actually save you marks in case you make a mistake. All right, so it's very important, guys, please. I know it's needing to get into that habit now, but in maths, we're not really that bothered of the answer. We actually give marks for your in-between working steps. Okay, and if you're making mistakes in between, we work with your mistakes to get started. All right, so that's what you need to be looking at, guys. Not only is my answer wrong, all right, but also where did I go wrong in the working? Okay, because that's where you will be doing a lot. Okay, I'm moving down there with mark 22. You weren't able to see it earlier. We have here increase. It's looking better so far than the previous time we marked. Okay. Let's turn the page. Where are numbers 29 and 30? And then you can mark the first few questions of the subtraction exercise. So we already marked 1 to 15 as subtraction, and then you had to do 16 to 50 as well. We're done at 29 and 15. Can I move up? Okay, I'll give it another second. Now moving down, if you need those answers again, you can just ask me afterwards. Right, these are all the subtraction ones, guys, but it's the same thing that applies here, right? That's a negative times a positive, even though there's no plus written there, right? 25 is positive 25. So what's a negative times positive? A negative, and 12 minus 25 is negative 13. Okay, if we're looking at 18, here we have a negative times a negative, which is what? A positive. Okay, so you need to remember that, please, guys. So you have negative, and here I actually did that. All right, I just wanted you to see another example of where you can do an in-between step for just the first two numbers, especially if the numbers are getting a bit bigger and it's positives and negatives mixed together. You don't have to do an in-between step, just for those of you that aren't totally comfortable with this yet. Negative 23 plus 12 is negative 11. Right, so this is equal to that. But guys, again, even though I'm doing an in-between step, I'm doing only these two numbers. Do you see that I'm still writing my minus 25 on the end? You know? That's important. Okay, you have to write that minus 25 all the way through until you actually are subtracting 25. Okay, yes? It's just because it was given like this in the question. Mhm. Yeah, I agree, but you have to write out the question as it is. Yes. Number 19, yeah. And number 19, there were lots of 12s here, hey? So the first thing here that we had to change was this negative times a negative, which is a positive. But then let's take a look. What's 12 minus 12? 0. 0 minus 12 is negative 12. And then what's negative 12 plus 12? 0 again. All right, so those 12 are actually like canceling each other out. 12 minus 12 is 0. And then negative 12 plus 12 again is 0. Thanks. The final answer is 0. All right, I'm moving down. Just let me know if I have to move up again to 21 or 22. You can do that just now. Any questions? I'm going to go through any of these. Just let me know. So it's basically just remembering and just multiply the two signs and then actually practicing doing the addition and subtraction without a calculator. Okay, guys, the only way that will become easier is if you practice it. All right, so you have to sit and actually do.
It's 424 on our notes. It said the sum that we worked out is wrong. It's 100 minus negative 50 minus negative 1.
Oh, is it? Oh, yes, I see. Sorry, guys, I copied this down wrong. Thank you. That must be a negative 100. Okay, let me fix that quickly. So what does this then become? Is this still correct? Negative times a negative is a positive, right? So now this is easy because now we're just adding all of them. What's 100 plus 50? 150, and then we add another 100 to that, that's 250, right? It's an erasable thing. All right, there we go. Thank you for pointing out. What? Say again? It's a type of pen that you can do. All right, 25. Thank you. Next focus, please. There we go, 25 to 50. So 26 and 27 were easy because there were no brackets, right? You didn't actually have to do any multiplication stuff there. You could just actually work out those answers. But guys, notice you have to write the question down. Okay, even if there's no working stuff, you do have to write the question down. So you know, if any of these, I can't copy out any of these wrong, I need to put them quickly. 27, 150 plus 20. Here we go, sorry about that. Okay, so let's see, what is that answer then, guys? What is 150 minus 200? Negative 70, right? And then what's negative 70 plus 20? Negative 50. Okay, let's check the others quickly. Yeah, here is your fine for me. Okay, guys, how are we feeling about addition and subtraction? Are we feeling okay? All right, we have quite a bit of multiplication and division questions that we must know of. I'm hoping that that was okay. I always feel like the division or the multiplication and division ones are easier than the addition and subtraction ones, right? Okay, so let's take a look there. Multiplication. So guys, this will be before the 16 to 50 that we just marked. Okay, you're gonna have to page back in your books because this was actually homework for Thursday, but then we didn't mark it. Okay, 113. No, that was only if you finished the additional subtraction. All right, guys, let's focus, please. Now, guys, with these ones, you then have to do that whole sign thing. All right, so you need to say a negative times a positive and a negative, and then you multiply the numbers like you would normally. So 2 times 8 is 16. Okay, so the next one, this is easy. 2 times 8 is 16. Okay, they're both positive, so the answer is positive. Number 3, a negative times a negative is a positive, and 4 times 8 is 32. Again, guys, we need to be able to do these multiplication and division questions, calculations in your head. Okay, so again, you're going to have to practice that if you're not so good with multiplying and dividing. Okay, I'm just moving down. Guys, quickly mark 6 and 7, 5 move down. Mark 1 and 2 and 6 and 7. All right, there we go. The rest is on the back of this page, so I'll turn the page now. So guys, when you start multiplying 3 numbers, right? It's a bit more complicated, but what I do is I always do the signs first. So I say, okay, what's a negative times a negative? Positive, and then times another negative is going to give me a negative, right? And then I'll do the numbers. So then I say 2 times 3 is 6, times 1 is 6. Okay, or you can do it like this. You can say negative 2 times negative 3 is what? 6, right? Positive 6. And you will then times that by negative 1. You can do it like that. And now what's the positive times the negative? The negative, and 6 times 1 is 6. Okay, so you can do the 3 signs and then the 3 numbers, or you can do the first 2 numbers, get the answer, and then multiply that by the third number. Okay, it's totally up to you guys, whatever you find easiest. Are there any questions so far, guys? Yes. About 7 more. 6 was 36. Okay, can I move to the next page? All right, there we have 11 to 15. Are you guys finding these ones easier than the addition and subtraction? You could if you want. But what I do is like I said just now, I do the signs and then I do the numbers. Okay, but if you did the second method, so guys, for number 11, it would have been fine if you had an in-between step here, where you said, what is 7 times negative 2? Negative 14, right? Positive times a negative is a negative, and 7 times 2 is 14. And then that you need to multiply by negative 1. Now, what's a negative times a negative? Positive, and 14 times 1 is 14. It might be easier to do it in that way. Okay, but that's perfectly fine. Yes. Negative 1. No, that's perfect. Yeah, guys, you can do that as well. You could do the last 2 numbers and then times that by 7 if you want to. Okay, as long as you write it down correctly, so then you would have to say 7 times, and multiply them together, you get 2. Okay, and then you'll answer that. Any other questions, guys? All fine. All right, let's look at the division ones. Same thing, guys. Positive divided by positive is a positive. All right, so 12 divided by 3 is positive 4. Again, here, positive divided by positive is a positive, and then you just do 12 divided by 3, which is 4. In number 3, a negative divided by positive is a negative. All right, the division rules are exactly the same as the multiplication rule. So the answer is negative, and then you say 12 divided by 3 is 4. For number 4, negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 12 divided by 3 again is 4. Again, you need to be able to do these without using a calculator, right? So you might have to go memorize your timetables again. I'm not sure how good you guys were with those in primary school. Do they still test those or what? Time tables. You have to like write them out, recite them or. Yeah, I suppose different schools do different things. All right, I'm moving down, guys, to 6 and 12 there. Then the rest is on the next page. Any questions? Okay, I am moving on to the next, the last three, 13, 14, and 15. Now, that's 14 and 15, you have first, right? But you just go from the left to the right. So you say you're going to again sort out your signs first if you want to. You can say a point divided negative is a negative, right? And then what's a negative divided by a negative? A positive, right? Or you can do it like this, which is I think what you guys probably did. You can do the first two down to 16 divided by negative 2. We agree that that's negative 8, right? Positive divided by negative is a negative, and 16 divided by 2 is 8. And now negative 8 you have to divide by negative 3. Negative divided by negative is a positive, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. Yeah. Yeah, you need to write for some like what other values. Yeah, so you use this one. You don't know. Those where you have, it's mostly with the plus and minus, where you have a positive times negative, that's for those ones you have to do it forward. Okay. But for these ones where you're just multiplying and dividing, it's fine. I wanted to say something else. Right, for 15 I did the 6, I did 18 divided by negative 3, positive divided by negative 2, and 18 divided by 3 is 6. Right, and then you divide that by, now it's positive 2. Do you need that bracket and that plus? Do you guys think? Okay, you don't really need that, hey? And the plus 2 is the solution. Okay, so I left out the bracket there. Oh, what I wanted to say, guys, this is a classic example of where your layout might be wrong. So check. You are allowed to say 16 divided by negative 2 is equal to negative 8. That is correct, but then I have a suspicion that some of you did this. Now I'm going to divide by that negative 4. Okay, and now it's 2. That's wrong, guys, because C divided by negative 2 is not 2. Alright, your original line is supposed to be equal to your final answer. Okay, so you are supposed to be able to read it like that. And in this case, that's not correct, because where's your divided by negative 4? You have to have that there. Okay, and then the final answer, which is 2, is correct. Okay, so that's something that you need to look out for, please, guys. They are things. You can't decide to leave them out and then add them in again when you're ready to work with them. Okay. All right, let's talk about BODMAS, guys. That is what you're heading. BODMAS with negative numbers. Just copy that, please. And guys, before we can talk about BODMAS, I'm sure some of you have heard about an abbreviation thing before. I'm sure some of you know how that works. We're going to talk about chips. Right? What is a term? Does anyone know? Have you worked with that? Or even someone else? Does anyone else know what a term is? Yeah? I think. Let me rephrase my question. Which mathematical operation separate them? Do you know what the answer is now? No? Which mathematical operation separator? Brackets, kind of. Okay, do you want that? We're also going to say brackets for what? Plus and minus. All right, so pluses and minuses. Good, guys. It's good that you're willing to answer questions that. And terms. What about no. So plus and minus are not divided, sorry, separate terms. Times and divide do not separate. I'll show you some examples now. And then another thing actually that do not separate terms of brackets. Yes, we are found we get 5 or 6 terms. Yeah. Yes, today even. Brackets do not separate terms. Times and divide do not separate terms. The plus and minuses do separate terms. All right, so plus and minus. For example, I'm going to write down an example here. 3 plus 4 times 2 minus 7 times 3. You see that you're copying that down correctly? That is the first question on your worksheet. Yes? Same event and then there was another bracket around the user given stuff. So that's this group thing. Okay, so we're going to do examples now with brackets. Right? Okay, now let's just start all the pluses and minuses. There's a plus over there. And then there's a minus over here. You can see those pluses and minuses. They form one term. Alright, so if we're looking at this, for example, the 4 times 2, we just say that times and divide do not separate terms. So this times, multiplication will here not separate the 4 and the 2 from each other. That's actually one term. Alright, the 3 over here is one term. You can underline that. That is the first term. The 4 times 2 is the second term. Even though it consists of 2 numbers, it doesn't matter, it's one term. And then this, and I think the minus is a bit tricky because the minus actually has to go with the numbers. Alright, so just when you underline the minus as well. Alright, so that negative 7 times 3, that is the third term. So even though there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, there are only 3 terms. Yes. Yes. Alright, so now I want to work this out. We have to calculate each term separately. Alright, so we can say equals. The first term is already one number on its own, so 3. Second term, 4 times 2? 8. So plus 8. You see that my second term, I've now actually just calculated what it is as one number. And now for the last one, negative, how much of 3 is? Negative 21. Now, it's quite easy to see that again we have 3 terms, right? Let's start with the plus and the minus there. That's to 1. That's term 2. That is term 3. And that's actually what BODMAS is all about. That's a way for us to figure out how to calculate separate terms before we actually start adding and subtracting it. So I'm going to write down what each letter stands for now. But let's just quickly calculate this number. What is 3 plus 8? 11. Okay, so we can do an in-between step, right? Let's practice that. So 3 plus 8 is 11. But remember, we must subtract 21 from that step. 11 minus 1. 11 minus 21, we all agree that that is negative 10. Right? So the answer there would be negative 10. Now, if you decide that you're going to say, okay, 3 plus 4 is 7. And then I'm going to times 7 by 2. Then I'm going to minus 7 from that. And then I'm going to times the whole answer by 3. You're not going to get the same answer. Right? You're going to get an answer that's wrong. Then you're not working with terms separately. Alright, let's quickly just write down what BODMAS actually stands for, all of the letters. Some of you might know already, if you don't, we're going to practice it now. Yes. Okay, so BODMAS is an abbreviation that tells us which order we must do operations in. All right, so BODMAS has to do with order of operation. So the B stands for brackets. That means, that means that if there are brackets in your question, you have to find the value of what's inside those brackets first. Okay? The O stands for O. Alright, O, if you doesn't start, we don't really work with O that much. Later on, I'm actually going to replace the O with something else, with a different letter. Don't worry about that too much now, yes? Alright, D stands for division, obviously, you guys run that. The M stands for multiplication. Alright, division and multiplication, we kind of do them in whichever order comes first, okay, whichever one comes first, or not. But these two kind of go hand, okay, division and multiplication, they kind of go together. And then the A stands for addition. And it's for subtraction. And again, these two kind of go together. And you should actually list the example that we did now without even discussing BODMAS, right? Just by identifying what our terms are. Do you see that we actually did multiplication before we did addition and subtraction? We did times 2 first before we added it to 3, right? And then we said -7 times 3 times before we actually minus the 21. Right, so that's what that operation is saying. You have to do division and multiplication before you do addition and subtraction. So guys, the addition is always going to be the last step. Yes. Then that's what we're going to use more often, yeah, where the E is for exponents. Okay, we'll come back to that when we're actually doing it. Yes. All right, guys, some more. Let's do 2 plus 3 in brackets times 4 minus 2 times 7 plus 10. Okay, now guys, here we are going to circle the pluses and minuses, but not the one that's in brackets. Because what does BODMAS say? Even though there's a plus in this bracket, you actually have to do brackets first. Alright, so here we have bracket times 4. Now what comes first, brackets or multiplication? Brackets. Okay, so this is a bit different from what happened in the first one. In the first one, we had no brackets. Alright, so we have to multiply before we add it into brackets. In this case, because this 3 is in brackets, we have it. Okay, so that's something helpful. Alright, what did I write here right at the top? Brackets do not separate. So even though there's a 2 plus 3 in this bracket, it's still one term. Any bracket is one term. And then what comes after the bracket? F times 4. So guys, this whole actually is one term. Just underline that. That whole bracket, because the brackets are red terms, and then that's times 4. That's one term altogether. Then we have a minus, right? Circle that minus. That is separating the first term from the second. Later on the next plus topic. That plus, that's separating term. So our second term is under that -2 times 7. That is the second term. And then the third term is a. But I apply that bracket, right? If I'm ignoring everything else, just the bracket, how many should I have there? Inside the bracket, ignore the brackets. Inside a 2 plus 3, thinking I have 2 terms inside the bracket, but we're not allowed to really look at it like that. Altogether, the bracket itself, sorry, is one term. Okay. Now, what about that? What is 2 plus 3? 5. And 5, we still need to multiply 4. We'll do that now. Here we have a minus. What's your 2 times +7? -10, right? We do that times before we subtract it, okay? And then plus 10. Right, can I start subtracting? Can I say this 4 minus 14? No, I have to first do the multiplication according to BODMAS. Multiplication before subtraction. This is still one term, guys. We actually calculated what that term is equal to. We just wanted the bracket. Okay, so what is 5 times 4? 20. So that's 3 minus 14 plus 4. Okay, what is 20 minus 14? 6 and 6 plus 6, yeah? Oh, no, no. So that's the final answer, guys. Any questions on that? Right, let's look at number 3, the next one. I haven't actually the number. You just leave us finger like the next one. As again, we see that we have brackets there, right? So I'm not going to circle the plus inside the brackets. Does everyone understand that? I'm going to circle this plus here. That's going to separate it. So I'm going to why am I also looking at minus in front? It's just a part of that number, right? There's no number or anything that comes before it. So this is just that. Yes? Yeah. 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 So that's what I mean, that these two kind of go hand in hand. The one isn't more important than the other one. You just kind of go from the left to the right. Okay, so you don't have to do addition first and then subtraction. It's more division and multiplication and then okay. That's why I group them together. Okay, so we find this. So that's the first term, -7. The next term is going to be the whole thing, right? The 4 and the bracket. That's my next term. Alright, what does that actually mean? When the number is just in front of the bracket. Yes. Multiplication, right? We've done it with a minus and negative. Now we have number and then a bracket. Okay, but we're actually going to multiply the 4 by whatever is in the bracket. Okay, we'll do that. Then we're going to circle that minus. That's separating terms again. My next term, 3 times 21, that's 3. Then we circle that plus. My fourth term is 7. Right, so here we are working with 4 separate terms. Okay, we're going to divide the value of each term before we add and subtract. Right, let's try to do anything here. No, it's already simplified, right? It's already a number. It's -7 plus. What do you do first? Do you multiply or do you do the bracket? The bracket, right? So 4. Now you can decide whether you want to keep it in a bracket. 7. Or you can write it as 4 times if you want. Right? That's why you can use the actual multiplication symbol. Now we have -3 times positive 21. First, what's a negative times positive? A negative. And now these are big numbers, right? So you can do it 3 times 21. That's 63. Hey, you first think what's 3 times 20? That's 6. And then what is 3? Right, so this is 63. And now for my last term, I have to do inflation thing. It's already just a +7, right? It's just the second term here that I still need to actually work that out. Right, so let's do that 4 times 7. All right, before we start adding and subtracting, what is 4 times 7? 28 minus 63 plus 7. Now guys, I want to teach you a little trick. You don't have to add and subtract the numbers in the order that they're written. You can kind of put it in an order that would be easy, because if you look at this, what's -7 plus 7? 0, hey, isn't that nice? So -7 plus 7 is actually 0. You can just draw a faint line through the two. They are technically canceling each other out. All right, on the side here, -7 plus 7 is equal to 0. You just add that there so that you know where those two numbers went to. Right, -7 plus 7 is equal to 0. So now we have to do 28 minus 63. Well, that's not so easy. All right, so let's break it up. What's 28 minus 3? 28 minus just the 3. 25, right? Then when we do 25 minus 60. Just give everyone a chance to check with me. We're doing 25 minus 60. Yes? -35. Okay, I'm going to write that down like I said. I'm going to say 28, and I'm technically breaking up the 63, right? To a -3 and a You don't have to write this down if you don't want to. I'm just an easier way back then, numbers that are so big. So 28 minus 3, we can all do that, right? That's easy. That's 25. But then we still have to subtract 6. About 25 minus 5 gives you 0. Do we all agree with that? 25 minus 25 will give you 0. But if I subtract with 25, what's left? What do I still have to subtract? 35. All right. So this, in the end, will give negative 35. So if I just can split up a big number into more manageable parts. Right, like that. There's no problem with that. Makes it better. Instead of thinking, oh, 28 minus 3 is whatever, just put it into 3 over 3. All right, that makes it easier. Okay, I'm going to give you a few of these to practice on your own. On the worksheet, the simple worksheet that you guys got the other day, I want you to do the BODMAS section. And I want you to do numbers 4 to 12. The 3 examples that I did now, we have 1, 2, and 3 on that worksheet, which is why I start with number 1. So you've already done 1 to 3 now with me. So you're doing 4 to 12. Okay, then do homework now. Now, if you guys Wednesday will mark these, right? And then depending on how it went, I might give you something. But you also start the project. I'm guessing yes, because you have to bring your shapes, right? Yes. Sorry about that, the dates on the page obviously were wrong. Your 3 other shapes of your Wednesday. Now I have marked more boxes there. And I'm going to mark them tomorrow. I have time during the day. I'm free quite a lot tomorrow. So if you need your box, you need to come to our room at the end of the day and come fetch your box. All right. By the end of the day tomorrow, I will have marked all of them. I'm going to leave them there and come and get your box. All right. Because on Wednesday, obviously, you need to bring the other 3 shapes in the same box. Okay. So I probably won't be able to do it by break because I actually will finish marking all of them before the end of the day. So you can come fetch them. Some of you might even have class in the last 2 hours, I think. Drama with the sound is here, I think. Yeah, so then you can grab your boxes. And Miss Gray is also teaching or something. Maybe? Period 5? Yeah, okay. So if you get everyone's lessons, you can take those. Otherwise, just come past at the end of the day. Okay, we can work on those questions now, please. Yes, but then you must also work while you're doing that, please. Guys, I will put those questions on the board for you.